Thank you all for coming. This is not what I expected to be doing a year ago, standing in front of such an auspicious crowd of people who've really made Eucalyptus a success. David's right. Eucalyptus, if it is a success because it's part of an ecosystem. It's actually building an ecosystem every day, and you are the anchor tenants for that. So what I thought I would do after that introduction was spend a little time talking about where we think Eucalyptus should go next. And when I say that, it's because it's us and you together that need to make this happen. But this is what we see when we look out at the cloud market and how it interacts with Eucalyptus. First thing that comes up a lot is what are the features that we're going to be working on? As Martin said, we really believe that people vote with their apps. That cloud technology is application and user-driven, not necessarily technology-driven, and the AWS API, for better or worse, is the de facto standard. So we are going to continue to build out on the AWS API and work with our community to do so as well. And you know, see, these are some of the things. It's not an exhaustive list. Don't think of that as being prioritized. We're listening to the community and working with contributors and customers to figure out what we need to do next and what we think the community should do next. The other thing that we're going to focus on in the near term is really the configuration and management part of Eucalyptus. It was built initially to be an installation experience that was compatible with the way Linux does that, and we've learned an awful lot about what Linux does well in this space and what Linux doesn't do well in this space. And so we're going to now begin applying that understanding to installation tools, GUIs, the administrative experience, the operator's experience. These are all things that really need to happen for Eucalyptus to go forward. So that's kind of the near-term nuts and bolts piece of it. Then what I thought I would do is really just talk about two trends that I think have emerged over the past year, at least as far as our experience with the community and the customers in the market. And first is that we're no longer really talking about physical pieces of hardware and physical locations of hardware as infrastructure. We really are talking about the platform, the service layer that presents that physical layer to applications and users as being the infrastructure. And that has some implications going forward. And then the second thing is, I think really clouds are emerging as the next community-operated distro mechanism. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So infrastructure, or soft infrastructure, is really kind of the new world. If you think about, you know, pejoratively, old IT as being a bunch of server huggers. What that really means is that the unit of administration, the unit that people work with is the server. They put things into servers and then they talk about servers. And those servers, that shorthand for a collection of policies and quality of service and reliability. We're no longer seeing that. We're seeing service huggers. Folks who don't really care about what the server is doing. What they really care about is the combination of QoS, capacity, and policy. And that comes from a service, not a set of servers. So Eucalyptus is architected for that, and we are going to pursue that. And we're going to do that initially in two ways. We think there's two things that we need to do. One, we need us, the community, you and us, to extend the data services that are there. There are all sorts of ways to scale. There's out, up, forward, backwards, so on and so forth. It's an overused term. We need to be able to leverage all those kinds of scale in the data services. And the two data services that we currently support are Walrus and EBS. We will continue to extend those, but there are others that are possible, and I look for the community to both help us with these and propose new ones. And then secondly, it's really going to be about policy. Right? We now have the plumbing. We can move the bits around. The question is, who owns the bits? When do they own the bits? When do they lose access to the bits? So on and so forth. And we have implemented in the next release, IAM, that's kind of the core of what you really need in the enterprise. And so we think that there are going to be lots of ways to extend that basic model to do a rich, enterprise-focused policy framework. And I think that's going to be a source of a great deal of collaboration. And then lastly, you know, the last couple of years has been about functionality, and I think the next year is really going to be about tuning. That's both knobs for people to turn and auto-tuning, where the system actually senses what's going on and tries to adapt to it in a way that makes sense and is audible. Okay, and then the second point I was going to make is that the clouds are really emerging as distros. This is a slide from Phil Papadopoulos at San Diego Supercomputer Center. He just sent this to me one day when we were having a conversation. An important part of this slide is this dark blue line. That's April of last year. 8,200 free images in Amazon. Those 8,200 software packages that are free, that have been QA'd millions of times today. That's an awful lot of free software, right? Compare just the bit count for that to the standard Linux distro, and you find out this is way more distributed. Those 8,200 images we hope run on Eucalyptus as well. So this is, I think, what is going to be the next generation of community software distribution. And to try and facilitate that, we are really, I think, going to start pushing out the notion of the Eucalyptus or cloud image. We actually have a little bit of this. This is an immensely popular thing. We have not focused on it because we've been really focused on the platform. But we believe we should start hosting and distributing images that can be automatically pulled into Eucalyptus, either on-premise or in the various hosted offerings that we have, the partner cloud, which many of you have used, and the community cloud, which hopefully all of you have used. And use this not only as a way to extend cloud computing, but really involve the community. I mean, there are lots of core contributions, that we can take, but if you think about how Linux works, the kernel is a much smaller software ecosystem than the distro. And if this is the distro, we've just built the kernel. So as far as community goes, this is really where it's going to take off, I think. I will end by thanking you all once again and say that I believe, really, you are going to be the success of Eucalyptus in the next year. It's going to be the year of the ecosystem. Thank you all very, very much, and I'll stop there.